So thanks for joining us. I'm going to hand over to some co-presenters this morning. So there'll be Steve Davey from National Highways and colleagues Maria Pia Angelino and Rebecca Shepherd from WSP. So without further ado, over to Steve.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. This is the fourth of these that we've done. So as we hold them on a 4-monthly basis, obviously that's quite a while since we first started these, but obviously time flies quite a bit with these. And as normal, we'll be sharing with you some key highlights on what's been happening on the DMRB and the MCHW updates, so that we can meet our RIS2 obligations. What's happening now is obviously people are getting, in many cases, the drafts are being developed, and we'll be moving on, and certainly in the next couple of years, onto more about consultation and approval activities. And we're going to talk about some new and enhanced processes and tools that have been launched. And we'll talk all about those through the webinar. Thank you for your positive feedback on the previous webinars. And I do hope that you continue to find these webinars useful. We will be asking some questions at the end to gain your feedback on about whether it's been useful, how we could be improved, because we want to make these obviously as useful as possible for everybody. So I'll hand over now to Marie-Pierre, who's going to take you through the first slides. Hopefully it's a good webinar for you all.
Thanks very much, Steve, and hi, everyone. So let me start with the objectives for this webinar. As usual, we're going to provide an update on key topics which are relevant to meet the RIS2 obligations. Steve has already mentioned that we are talking about how we are keeping the DMRB up to date and also updating the MCHW. So that's all about the MCHW refresh program. We will share a few highlights in terms of progress to date. We're going to emphasize areas where actions are needed by all parties. And we are also keen to collect feedback from the audience. We will be asking questions, specific questions at the end using Menti. And for those who are not familiar with Menti, this is an online interactive platform which helps to answer questions and get real-time feedback and also answers. Of course, throughout this presentation, you're more than welcome to also ask questions, make any comments on the, of course, as far as possible, kind comments on the Teams chat box, which is provided here on Teams. We will try and answer as many questions as possible during the presentation, but if we can't do that, there may be also questions that we'll probably park for further explanation. We will share the FAQ at the end of this webinar, and the FAQ will be stored on the help pages. So let's then start with the agenda for today. I'm gonna start this presentation with our safety moment. I will then continue with a few MCHW highlights, and in particular, I will be presenting the program, a few information around the quality of the drafts in relation to authoring. I will then share, actually my colleague Rebecca will be sharing with you a few information around the impact on the DMRB from the MCHW refresh, the new CARS functionality which is now in place, and also the support which is provided to you. We'll then move into the DMRB highlights, and Becky will be presenting the program and a few information around the feedback management. We will move on into the fourth part with the governance deliverables and a few insights into those deliverables which currently are missing and have to be completed. And then Becky will be presenting some information under the In Focus and in the News, providing some updates on the Standards for Highways website and the MCHW comms plan we have in place. We'll then finish off with some closing remarks, summarizing the key messages and actions and where to go for help. And in the end, I will be asking some questions, some open Menti questions to understand the status, the mood around the participants. In this presentation, we'll be using some acronyms in a few places. I'm not going to go through this list, but Rebecca, if you're so kind to take a screenshot and share with the audience. So if anybody has got any questions or does not follow because of some of the acronyms used, just have a look at this table. It does provide all the relevant words. We will try and minimize, but in some cases we'll may be using some acronyms when presenting. Let's start with our safety moment for today. And what I choose was to talk to you about a few ways for recharging our minds over the Easter break. We are now near the end of the first quarter of the year, and somehow we all feel that we need to slow down and rest before starting the next financial year. So it's now time to allow ourselves the space to recharge and renew before keep going. And here I selected a few examples of ways to recharge our mind and body. They may not all be relevant to you, but I just felt that these are the most typical ones, and at least one of them may be relevant to you as well. So the first one is about getting back to nature. Just taking time to get out into nature does reduce stress and fear, and has got a very positive effect on our psychological well-being and energy. So do take time during the Easter break to reconnect with nature as far as possible. You can also choose to get lost in a good book. And I do encourage you to find something uplifting, engaging, and empowering to read, because it does make a big difference, and it does allow the mind to imagine, explore, and focus more than we normally do on a workly daily basis. Moving your body is the third way of recharging. And of course, I'm talking about exercising of any kind. It can be dancing, it can be walking, working out. It just helps us to feel happier, healthier, and it also allows us to get out of our heads and back into our bodies, which is always important to get our brain to rest and recharge. Find mindfulness through meditation and silence is also another useful one. I do a lot of meditation. It does help improve attention, focus, stress management, and also helps with self-awareness and self-control. But of course, if meditation is not your thing, you may try also find time for silence, because the less our brain has to process, the more relaxed we feel. You can take a device detox as well. Because every time we pick up our smart devices, our brains are being bombarded with loads of information, and we have to filter this information, making sense, storing, and of course, we just need our brain to take some rest, and that would be a good way of doing that. And finally, getting creative, because creativity can help to that have a calming effect on the brain and the body, and helps reducing anxiety and depression, and also stress. It's a very good stress release channel. Of course, you may choose one, more of them. We just felt it was nice to share with you different ways of recharging you over the Easter break, Easter period. Let's now move on into the next part of this presentation. This is all about the MCHW highlights, and I'm going to start with some program updates for you. At the end of January 2023, so a month and a half ago, there was a workshop in Birmingham with all the technical standard committee chairs. There was a lot of discussion around the program, the status of it. And one of the key actions that came out of that discussion was for TSC chairs to provide revised forecast dates reflecting the current program progress, any associated risks with specific documents, and also the recovery plans. The TSC chairs have then provided updated dates towards the beginning of February, and in particular, they have provided 4 key dates: drafting start, consultation start, consultation completion, and Technical Standard Committee Chair acceptance. I just want to clarify what I mean here with the TSC Chair acceptance in particular, because in drafting, of course, I can see somebody saying that the slides are blank. Can you, Rebecca, can you confirm you can see the slides on the screen?
I've got the presenter view, but can you see it, Rebecca?
I can see them, but if it's not a comment. Okay, I was going to suggest maybe re-showing the slides, but
we'll get you a copy, Andy, anyway afterwards. Just so apologies if you can't see it.
Oh, they can.
Over to you, Rebecca. Over to you, Maria Pia. I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. So, of course, drafting is pretty obvious in terms of stages when the technical auditors are starting to draft. Consultation start and end is essentially the period where the consultees are providing comments and they are participating in the consultation stage. After that, there are other stages happening during the TSC stage, which is the comment resolution stage where technical authors are addressing comments. There is the quality review stage when the content specialists check the MDD compliance. And then there is the TSC chair acceptance before the document can go to the next stage, which is the potential quantification by commercial, which is done in the quantitative assessment stage. And then after that, there will be the TSC chair ratification before the document can go to approval. So these are the 4 dates: start drafting, start and completion of consultation, and acceptance, which have been provided and will be confirmed later this month at the next SCS business management meeting. These dates have been provided using an Excel spreadsheet which has been circulated, and then the TSG will be seeking to update the JIRA following the confirmation of the updated dates. So it will be with TSG to then refresh JIRA accordingly. Looking at the program, and just to give some figures here, at the moment, based on the updates which have been made, there are 70 MCHW documents into the program, of which we've got 2 which are in planning and preparation, 40 are currently in drafting at various stages of the process. Some of them are very mature and ready to consultation. Some others are in early stages of drafting. We've got 16 documents in consultation at the moment, and there are also 12 in post-consultation stages. The number of change items has risen slightly because some series have been split into multiple documents. Once JIRA will be updated with the new dates reflecting the current situation, please, as a technical author, make sure that these dates are kept up to date and reflect the status of the document development. But if some of the dates have to be changed, there is a date change request available, and the help page, which is provided, the link here, is where you can find an explanation on how to put in your change request. In doing so, please clarify and provide details and justification for the change, because that helps to understand the status of each document. The other thing I wanted to mention here is that this graph is showing here the changes that the program went through since 2021. So the blue bars are showing the approval dates that were agreed back in 2021 through the collaborative workshop that was held with all the TSC chairs. The orange bars are the forecast submission dates for TSC chair approvals, which were dated back in December 2022. And then the black ones are the updated dates, which we got now in February. So you can see quite clearly that the program is significantly condensed. So most of the activities are now happening basically now, and there will be a lot of work towards the end of the year, between October, I would probably say November 2023. And clearly, when we talk about the program condensed, it doesn't mean condensed workload on the parties involved. On this slide, we were also keen to show you the current schedule. So this diagram is showing you all these colored bars. Each bar is a MCHW series, an MCHW document, and the different colors represents the different stages in governance. So most of the time, technical authors, of course, are very familiar with the drafting stage, which is basically identified in yellow. TSC chairs are very much familiar with the consultation one, which is the blue one. But there are also other stages like a comment resolution, which is of interest for technical authors, of course. There is the quality review stage in gray. There is the quantified assessment done by commercial in light blue. And then you've got a few dates which are relevant for TSC chairs like ratification. And then you got the approvals and the authorization in the end. When you look at this type of graph, there are a few considerations we wanted to share with you. First of all, there is a large number of consultations happening from March to the end of August 2023. And clearly that does pose an issue on the consultees that are involved into the consultation periods, particularly when they are the same people involved in different TSCs. When you look at the dates, it's also important that there is enough time, sufficient time allowed between the end of drafting and ratification. And it does need at least 14 weeks as a rough number, because it does need to allow time for the consultation itself, the resolution of the comments, the quality review, and then the document can then go to quantification and ratification. So it does take time to undertake all these tasks. Commercial will also be involved in a large number of quantitative reviews from June to the end of October, as you can see on this graph, looking at the light blue bars. So clearly, not all the documents will need a quantification, but it does also means that commercial will have a large number of documents anyway to review over the next few months. And finally, I wanted to share with you this point around content specialist support. There is a very large number of reviews which will be undertaken by content specialists in a very limited period of time, if you see the gray bars here. However, content specialists don't just do quality reviews. They're also involved when you're drafting, when they provide you progressive assurance. They're also involved during the consultation stage as TSC TSG members. They provide you information on the EU notification process. They provide input on several contractual aspects. So there's a very large number of reviews that they do in a very limited period of time. And of course, if these dates are not met, there will be a snowball effect, because that will then affect all the other contributors and parties involved in the process, including approvers, and final chief office engineers and chief roads engineers, authorizers at the end of the process. So to manage this, we do have to work as one team across all the different stages of the governance process. So starting with consultation, it's very important to consider the impact of multiple consultations happening when the same consultees are involved. And this is something for TSC chairs to manage and consider when setting up the consultation stages. Commercial, as I said, will be involved in reviews of quite a lot of documents. So it's very important for technical authors to identify key changes which have commercial implications. Not all the changes have cost implications, and the new commercial impact assessment tool can help you identify these instances so that commercial can do a quantified assessment only when absolutely necessary. And from a quality review perspective, this is basically done between technical authors and TSG content specialists. So for technical authors, please share the complete drafts with the TSG content specialist at least a month before consultation to get feedback, particularly if you're sharing the complete document, because there won't be then time if there are so many documents coming through to get feedback for your consultation in time. And on the other side, content specialists will be undertaking the reviews within the agreed timescale, which will be provided to you when you share your own documents. I want to finish here in terms of MCHW program, looking at a few key milestones. This diagram is showing you, looking at the different rows, all the parties involved. So we've got the authoring at the bottom and the TSC involvement. We've got the quantification in the second row starting from the bottom, approvals, authorizations, and the TSG contribution at the very top. So the two key dates for you to remember as a technical author, the key date is end of May 2023, when MCHW documents, there needs to be the end of authoring of the MCHW documents. And when you start then putting the next stages against it, it gets to end of September 2023 for the last TSC acceptances, and end of November 2023 for the last ratifications before the document can go to approvals, as you can see here on the screen. So these are very much the key dates. I also wanted to share some highlights on the quality issues. There are, at the moment, there's been a huge number of reviews done across all the different disciplines. And there are a few recurrent quality issues which have been identified, and I'm listing them in order of importance on this screen. So there are 8 items in particular that it's really important for technical authors to manage properly, because when this is done, the documents are really spot on and the review does take a very short amount of time. And I'm talking about structuring the document in an appropriate way, ensuring that the different requirements like product installation, verification, and documentation are presented following the rules. I'm not going through this whole list, but I just want to say 2 things. One is that when these things are addressed, there is no contractual ambiguity in the clauses. And the second is, when you're drafting your documents, please make sure that these items are addressed, because we are going through this list when we do the MCHW clinics with all of you. I also wanted to share a success story here. There have been several, but I wanted to share this one because it does provide the whole picture, both on the MCHW and on the DMRB side. So this is what you can see on the screen is CC130, which is about construction of temporary traffic signs and road markings. And on the right-hand side, you can see the companion DMRB document and relevant clauses, CD130, which provides the design requirements for temporary traffic management. So this is an example of how things have been done in a successful way. Constructor requirements are present in a proper way. The schedules are also presented following the rules. There's a direct relationship between MCHW and DMRB, as you can see on the screen. I know that in several situations you've been asking good examples, and we were really, really keen to share this with you because this is very much a great way of managing the work. So well done to the team, but I also want to say well done to other teams who've been doing a great work as well. Rebecca, over to you with these other few slides.
Great, thanks, Maria-Pia. So Maria-Pia has just talked through the MCHW programme. What I'm just going to talk about on the next couple of slides is the consequential changes to the DMRB documents affected by the MCHW changes. So what we've got on the screen there is that programme that was presented earlier with the MCHW dates, but added to it in yellow are the DMRB, the affected DMRB document related dates. So there's 36 documents, DMRB documents have been identified as linked to the MCHW rewrite, of which 30 of those are existing documents that will be updated and 6 are new documents. So the authoring for these will be completed by January 2024, with the review and approval stages following. But it's important to note at this stage, if you're a technical author, that you have a skeleton plan for these updates, and that is shared when the associated MCHW document goes to consultation. Go on to the next slide. So practically how to do this. So as you're authoring these updates to the DMRB, they're typically authored in kind of a holding document or a holding section. And the reason for this is that enables, if there are instances where you need to make more urgent changes to the DMRB documents in advance of the Big Bang publication in a couple of years' time, this enables that to happen. So on this slide here, there's a link to the help page, which details the approach to managing these consequential DMRB changes and how to draft them. This also is relevant if you have any other instances for any other reasons where you need to make multiple changes to the same document at the same time. So if you are so there are 36 documents that have already been identified. But if you do identify any additional documents, DMRB documents affected, please let TSG know so that a change item can be created in JIRA for those. Great. We move on then. We've got three slides here focusing on the changes, the updates that have been made to the functionality of CARS. So there's ongoing work in the background improving the functionality of CARS. So that's the collaborative authoring and review system. And these updates are often made in response to feedback to make it easier for you to author and review documents. So you get, as a CARS user, you'll be getting the release notes in an email every time a functionality is released. And on these next few slides, this just sums up the recent functionality updates. So there should be nothing new here. So the first item on this slide is the ability to insert WSR references. So previously, the standard format requirements that direct the constructor to the WSR had an uneditable placeholder, the ref to WSI in them. And that placeholder is now being replaced with a new functionality to insert the WSR reference. Now, before a section can be referenced, a WSR for the section that is being referenced to needs to be created or defined. Many cases that's been done, but if you need to do that for your document to create that mapping, please contact Kurt and he'll arrange a session to set those references for your document. It's not a huge task, but it does need to be done. So once the section you want to reference to has been defined, then as a technical author, you can insert the WSR reference into your document where applicable. And there is a help page link there which explains how to do that. Okay. So moving on then, there's also been an update to the MCHW document information page regarding how document codes are entered. So previously, technical authors were asked to provide the document code for the MCHW document, but that was causing a bit of confusion because the content that's being authored in CARS will be published both as a specification for highways work and the instructions for specifier document. So multiple codes apply to a single CARS document. So the document information page has now been updated to request the document number part only, so 605 rather than CC 605. So 2 additional read-only fields have been added, which will show the respective SHW and IFS document codes as applicable. Now, a more substantial update from your perspective is probably the ability to export draft versions of the MCHW publication output. And these are draft versions of what will be created based on what is being authored in CARS, and that's a WinZip file containing the PDF or the HTML versions. And you might want to use that, for example, in the package of information shared with consultees. You can request exports for that by using the standards inquiries mailbox. And then finally, in order to help technical authors visualize how a schedule will be presented within the instructions for specifiers document, CARS now provides a preview function. So the preview has all the content that will be included in the export. So for example, the caption, the schedule in tabular form and the instructions to the specifier on how to populate the schedule. The preview is provided below the related specify instruction and is automatically generated upon accessing the documents section, and it can be refreshed to reflect any authoring changes. Where a schedule doesn't fit into a single table, that will automatically be split, and the first column of the schedule will be repeated at the start of each portion. The PDF and the HTML exports will reflect the same splitting, but the WSR template, so that is the Excel document that the specifier would complete, that won't be split, that will be shown as one single table. Okay, and finally, before I pass on to Becky, this slide just sums up the various support provided for the MCHW work that's ongoing. So there are weekly drop-in sessions. This is where you can get ad hoc support. So if you have any kind of questions or queries that crop up as you're doing the work, you can attend the drop-in sessions to ask them and get help on those ad hoc queries. There are targeted clinics that Maria Pia mentioned earlier, and these are document or groups of documents specific, where you'll get one-to-one support for your document, the output of that being a clear list of areas to be addressed to deliver compliant documents. The support for the WSR mapping, as I mentioned earlier, get in touch with Kurt to arrange a session to do that if you've not done that yet. And then the quality reviews that are being undertaken by the content specialists, so they can provide that progressive support and also as part of the consultation stage. There are automated checks incorporated into CARS to check your documents for compliance with the MDD. Please take note of any warnings that do crop up as you're authoring and address them there and then, rather than waiting for them to go to the content specialists and be picked up there. Because the content specialists are also reviewing for MDD compliance. But those automated checks take some of that work away from the content specialists and help it to be addressed immediately. The MCHW programme management, that's managed by Kurt Surtees, supported by Holly Crabb. So please get in touch with them with any, if you need any support on the programme management side of things. And then authoring guidance, if you're a technical author, you should have had full training prior to starting this work. Those sessions were all recorded, so if you need a refresh, you can go look at those again. And there's also the help pages that cover all the topics, all the various authoring topics. So if you just need to refresh yourself on a specific topic, go and read those articles on the help pages as needed. And then there's the Teams channel, which is used to share updates. So please read those updates as they come through. We try and keep the quantum of updates to a minimum. And then finally, the MCHW publication and final outputs. There was a webinar on that end of last year to show you what your work is heading towards. If you missed it and want to see it, there's a link on this screen for you to catch up on that. Right, I think that's everything on the MCHW, so I'll pass on to Becky, who will talk about the DMRB.
Thanks, Rebecca. So yeah, I just wanted to share how it's going with the DMRB documents. And just to recap, I know we've mentioned lots of slides and links and things to look at. You will get a copy of the recording and a PDF copy of the slides with any links that you need. So since the last webinar in November, there's been 7 updates to the design manual for roads and bridges. So looking at the list, I know we had a couple of new ones on there. Drones operations and the requirements for reporting incidents, events and circumstances. Those links are clickable with the information we send you, but just as a recap of the good work that's been going on. So as a summary, we've now got 169 published DMRB documents. And as you know from previous sessions, there's a requirement to do something called a document review to make sure that the document is under 5 years old. We've had some really good success since the last webinar in terms of getting those document reviews completed. There's probably too many teams to call out, but thank you so much. It was at 10 in November, and as of this morning, it's at 37 completed, which is fantastic work. I know people are putting a lot of thought now into having that rough plan for what's coming out of MCHW maybe, or what needs to come up with the next review of the DMRB. So just as a reminder, getting the document review now is your plan. We're not saying you have to update the document immediately if there is a change, but just to say, do complete your plan because it helps with future planning. So we've mentioned before, due to the way that we published the DMRB back in RIS 1, everything seemed to come in at the end of March 2020. So there's currently 52 document reviews scheduled for March 2024, which means there would be a peak of work, but where people are doing them early and chipping away at them, that's reducing this number, which is fantastic. And as Rebecca mentioned, there were 36 DMRB documents identified as needing an update as a result of the work that's going on with the MCHW. So as ever, we do recommend doing the DMRB document reviews when you're doing the other work, because it makes sense to think about it all at the same time. Another aspect that people have been working on is responding to feedback items. So where you used to get them through an email, we're now using our feedback form, which is working really well. It's accessible via, there's a link on the right-hand side of the slide. This is also being published on the front page of standards documents where they're having a more recent publication. So as of this morning, we're at 281 feedback items received. 207 of those have been marked as closed, and we've got the smaller numbers. 49 of these are on hold pending some further action. Sorry, marked as hold, saying that you know you need to do something with it, you just haven't decided yet, and 25 are waiting that further action as just to determine what comes next. So we've got a recap here in this green box. On hold means that you've answered the initial inquiry, you've responded to it, but you just need to determine what happens next. It may be that you do mark it as closed with no action needed. It may be that you do need to make a change, or it may be that you just need some thinking time. The box to the right, feedback closed, change required. So that's where you've said, yes, there is something we need to update in future. You can link it to the item on JIRA that captures all of the governance. That's called the change item. And as we said, it's not necessarily an immediate do it now. It's just having that formal plan for what comes next. Some of you mark them as closed, no change required, and that's where it's a legitimate query that you're easily able to answer. There might have been some clarification needed. So we've got a feedback management system help page link there, just for any more guidance about how it all works. Okay, so moving on now to governance deliverables. So I really appreciate all of the hard work that goes into the governance deliverables and completing these alongside the drafting in CARS. We know it's a lot of work that goes into these. So just as a recap of some of the common issues that are coming up. So governance deliverables are part of our protocol requirement, just to show our decision making and records if we were ever challenged about why we did something. This high view flowchart, sorry, it's probably a bit too small to read on this slide, but this is just a way of us determining what governance deliverables are required, dependent on what you're doing with your document. So on the left-hand side, our category A, where you've got something that's completely new, or you're doing a major revision, it's more onerous in terms of governance deliverables because we're needing to see that document development plan, the various impact assessments, and potentially a change log if it already exists published outside of CARS. As we move over to the right-hand side of this diagram, we just see that these coloured boxes showing what you need get less and less. It's really just there as a visual, but I can explain more on the next slide. So each deliverable is important, or has equal weighting importance for what it's used for. We know just from speaking to people that sometimes the governance deliverables get missed, and in particular it's probably the change logs and the commercial impact assessments for the MCHW updates are the ones that perhaps get forgotten. So the change log is the one that you complete on cars alongside the drafting, and you're really just going through the whole original document, either to strike it out as deleted, no longer required, or linking it across to what you've drafted in the document on cars. The commercial impact assessment, so this has got its own impact assessment spreadsheet, and it's really important for our commercial team to understand the key changes between what already existed and what you're intending to do in future. They need that alongside the CARS document for consultation, just to aid what they're doing and not hold up any further checks at the end. Governance deliverables are stored in the SharePoint folders. So we've got all of the master templates in there. We try not to make changes, but sometimes we get feedback or good practice or helpful guidance that means we sometimes do have to tweak the forms. So if you're starting something new in terms of those forms, we recommend taking the current version. We'll always let you know in Teams channels if there's any update and just explain what it is. There's training videos and guidance available on the help pages as ever. And we recently had some guidance provided to us by the Central Carbon team, just to try and help people fill in the carbon impact assessment guidance part of the impact assessment. So that there is another link for you to look at in your own time. Okay, moving on to In Focus and in the news. So I had really hoped that this morning that I'd be able to give you some good news about an update to the Standards for Highways website that's been going on in the background. We attempted to do roll out some enhancements yesterday morning, but unfortunately there were some issues that came up last minute that we hadn't encountered before in testing. So apologies, it's not quite the demonstration that you might have been expecting. The enhancements are targeted now for the end of March, so we'll be working hard in the background to get those released as soon as possible and be communicating to you once they are ready. Really, it's moving away from, we used to have a website maintained by a partner where Williamsley, where we had the MCHW documents. Some other parts of the business also had some documents on there, like the asset data management manual, network management manual, etc. We're incorporating anything on that older part of the website into the what is currently the DMRB website, just taking it over completely, giving it a refresh and just making sure we can make it as easy as possible to find things. So once it does go live, there'll be one Standard for Highways website. There'll be a way of looking for DMRB, MCHW, or those archived interim advice notes. Even better, there'll be an archive available for the MCHW going back to 2001, which will help people find those where they traditionally had to email us and wait for a reply. There'll be a new user account area, so you can bookmark documents of interest. You can choose to get email notifications about those bookmarked documents or any kind of blanket update every month. You can get an email prompt now when something happens, which is much better than having to manually look every month or look for announcements. We used to have an option to purchase a CD, which obviously is an outdated technology. So there's a new functionality to download a zip file of all of the standards that were published on a particular date. Going live, it will be from April 2020 onwards that you can pick a date, but likely to go further back just as we get it released and find our feet with how it's all working. So coming soon, and I hope to give you more information on that very soon. So just to say in the background, we're working with the communications teams within National Highways, both internal and external, just to make sure that we can get the right messages out to colleagues in the business and the supply chain about what's happening with the MCHW. There's lots of work to do, but we are committed just to make sure we communicate as early as possible to everybody that needs that information. If you're due to attend an event and want to talk about the MCHW, please do let us know, because we'll have slides and material that we can share with you I've just put a link there to a slide pack we shared with Nasira Thompson that she used for a DBFO presentation. So very welcome to have any resources that we've got. Okay, looks like I'm handing back over to Rebecca for the closing remarks.
Great, thanks, Becky. So we are getting very close to the end of this presentation. So just a recap of what we've covered. So provided an update of the key topics related to meeting the RIS2 obligations. We've shared progress and emphasised areas where actions are needed. And thank you for those comments that I've seen popping in on the Teams chat box. We'll just be using Menti in just a second. So before I'll run through some of the key messages picked up earlier in the presentation. But before I do, I just want to say a big thank you for all the work that's been done to date. We do recognise that there's been a huge amount of work being done across all areas, working towards those RIS2 obligations. So thank you very much. Focus on the next few months is very much on getting those MCHW documents drafted and through the consultation stage. So just a quick recap of what we went through on the MCHW programme, significantly compressed, and we need to work together as one team to collectively achieve that final goal, which is delivering that work programme. So the key deadlines are the end of authoring in May 2023, TSE Chair's acceptance in September 2023, and ratification in November 2023. There have been some recurrent quality issues that have been identified, and so we shared that checklist of them. So please make use of them if you're authoring a document to address those quality issues whilst you're authoring. Act on those CARS warning messages that are checking for MDD compliance, and engage with the provided support as needed. DMRB consequential amendments need to be planned in advance, and a skeleton plan should be shared when the relevant MCHW document goes to consultation. So related to the DMRB then, document reviews generally shorter than perceived, so it's considered complete when it's marked as such in JIRA and the associated change item is created, not when the associated change item is completed. It can be effective to complete the document reviews when you're working on the consequential DMRB amendment, so you're touching that DMRB document once rather than twice. And then on the feedback management system, make sure if you're classifying feedback that you distinguish correctly between whether it's on hold, so a change item has not been created yet but might need to be, or if it's closed with change required and the change item has been created. And then finally, on the governance deliverables, so there's been instances with governance deliverables missing. All the deliverables are important, so they do need to be completed. There are templates for all the various deliverables and guidance for all of those available. And there's also that new guidance on the carbon impact assessment. Right, I will pass on to, is it you, Becky, just to run through the where to go for help.
Yeah, so just to recap as ever, how you can get in touch with us if you need any further assistance. So there's the manual for development of documents that has the drafting governance rules. The link is here and will be shared separately afterwards. We do recommend our drop-in sessions. So the MCHW one is every Tuesday, led by Kate and Simon. Sorry, that should say 11:05 now to 11:50. We gave it a bit of a buffer just for people having back-to-back meetings. And then every couple of weeks on a Tuesday afternoon, I have one related to JIRA or governance. If you don't have the invite in your calendar, please do let me know. Happy to share that with you. The help pages, as ever, are there. We've gave it a bit of a revamp. It was very unwieldy, lots of links and things going on. So you should hopefully find it easier to find what you need there, but give us some feedback if not. Key contacts within the technical standards group team. So overall standards governance, you've got Kurt. It's myself for any training materials, JIRA support, or likewise helping Kurt with governance queries. I look after the DMRB programme as a whole. Kurt looks after the MCHW programme. We've got our free content specialists. So Morris looks after DMRB. And you've got Kate and Simon for your MCHW queries. Simon also for anything to do with EU legislation and notification. So we're now at the end, so I'm just going to hand over to Maria Pia to talk about the Menti questions.
Thanks, Becky. I'm going to share my screen now, so hopefully you should be able to see it coming through.
Yeah, we can see that. Thank you.
Perfect. So can you please go on to www.menti.com, and the code to be used is 62341987. And once you're in, please click on the heart at the bottom of this slide so we know how many people we've got on Menti, please. I think
put
we've
the
got
QR
about
code in the chat if anyone wants to use that.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be useful. Thanks, Rebecca. We've got about 110 people today, so let's wait for a few more people joining. It will take about 4 minutes to go through this question, so we will finish on time. If you're struggling accessing Menti, let us know. You can access it using your laptop as well as your mobile phone. So the code is 62341987. Okay, you can see a few more people. Okay, I'm waiting to get up to 50, about half of the attendees. Okay, so let's keep going. Of course, please do continue to access Menti. You will be then able to see the questions. So the first question, because we are doing this every webinar, we are also comparing the answers and the feedback. So can you please clarify your role in the DMRB MCHW Refresh program, whether you're an author, part of the supply chain, a chair, a consultee, an approver? On it is not entirely clear to you, your specific role. Yeah, so you can see a good number of technical authors and technical consultees coming through. Good. Yeah. So we've got quite a lot of technical consultee and a few technical authors. We've also got the devolved administrations authors, which is great to see, supply chain authors, a few TSC chairs, one secretariat, and also a couple of approvers, concurrence consultees and editorial consultees, all of them. So moving on to the next one. How are you feeling about keeping the DMRB up to date, which is the parallel obligation as well as doing the MCHW refresh program? Yeah, I can see a few people replying, and it's nice to see some smiling faces here. I hope it was useful for you, the comments that Becky were making around doing the document reviews, which doesn't mean to complete the change associated with the reviews, but it is about checking the document, doing the checklist, and completing the document review, marking it complete into the system. So if you want to know a bit more about that, please be in touch. And Becky is also available on Tuesdays to answer any questions in relation to that. So the next one is, how are you feeling about the MCHW refresh program? We've been talking about that extensively today, looking at the program, the quality, some of the key dates, workload issues. Yeah, I can see a few less smiling faces on this one, a few intermediate one. Okay, yeah. This is getting to a busy point of the year. So the next 4 months before our next webinar will gonna be critical to meet the obligation. So we are here to provide support. Do ask any questions, do attend the drop-in sessions, the clinics we are organizing with all of you, making sure that you know exactly what you have to do. You're not wasting your time and you're targeted to address all the quality-related issues. So the next question that I had, this is about those who've been attending consultations. So if you have been involved, can you please rate the effectiveness of the consultation process? Effective, efficient, is it okay? Are there any issues with that? Yeah, I can see a few people have not been involved yet, which is fine. And I'm also keen to hear, not in this webinar, but separately if you like, the person who said it is inefficient, because we are very keen to make sure that things work properly for everyone involved in the process. So please do get in touch and more than happy to discuss what didn't work with you. Next question. There are a few governance deliverables, as was presented by Becky today, from document development plan, which is done at the outset, up to the document review checklist when you're managing and maintaining your documents, and then we've got CARS and JIRA. Can you please rate your experience from very poor to very good? We are keen to understand your the situation here, because of course we do a lot of work to make sure that these things are fit for purpose. So please share your feedback. It's nice to see that CARS works fine, quite well actually. Yeah. Of course, what you can see here is doing average of the responses. There may be responses where you feel that the experience is very poor. And again, please do get in touch and share your feedback, because if we don't know what's not working properly, it's very difficult for us to address any issue. So please do take the chance of all the channels available to make your comments. And again, this is another one on understanding your experience of using the help pages. They have been recently revamped. So just what is your experience of using them also in the past? They're a very important companion. They do provide a lot of important information. And today we'll be sharing several links taken from the help pages. So it's important for us to understand whether you're using them or not, and what we can do to improve them. Okay. And because I'm very conscious of time, I just want to go straight into the last one. How helpful have you found this webinar? we'll be running these every 4 months, as we said. So if you have any feedback on what you'd like to hear more or less, just let us know and we will retarget the content to something which is more helpful for you. Okay. So I think that takes us to the end of this webinar. I just want to say thank you very much to all again. I hope you found it useful, interesting. If you have any further comments or questions, just be in touch. But hopefully the next few months, well, we are all available here to provide support. Feel free to get in touch as and when needed. Steve, Becky, would you like to say some words before we close this webinar?
My thanks as ever to everybody for your time. A recording will be sent to you as soon as possible, a PDF copy of the slides with any of those links, and we'll be following up the questions in the chat. So I'll hand over to Steve now.
Thanks everyone for attending. Hopefully, well, I know from the results that the majority of you found this helpful as a webinar based on what the Menti scores were. Yeah, we are here to help where we can. Do appreciate it's difficult, and we will look to answer as many questions that we could do on the chat and obviously elsewhere. So, and recordings and slides will be made available. So thank you everybody, and we'll be back again in 4 months hopefully.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.